Hi, this is Jen Miller, and the catalog that I'm using is the catalog from my school library. This coming school year, I will be the new librarian there. And so the section that I chose to look at were biographies, specifically biographies at the interest level for kinder through second, so for our younger readers. And when I filtered, I can see that there's over 296 books in this section. When I was just quickly scrolling through, some things that I noticed is that there are a lot of these picture book of biographies. I also noticed a lot of the this there's a series called the Young, like George Washington, or the Young Rosa Parks series. Both of the picture book of and the Young series are from the late 80s and early 90s. And we have quite a few of those in our library. And so that's just something that I noticed. Another thing that I noticed is that we had quite a few of this Young profile series. And the names of the celebrities that were covered in this Young profile series just jumped out at me quickly, that they're quite out of date and probably of not much interest to the students at my school. Something else while I was scrolling through is I just noticed quite a few titles about some specific people. In particular, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Anne Frank, George Washington, and Abraham Lincoln. And I totally understand that those are very popular public people to complete research on. They're very well known, and students are going to be looking for books on those. But I did notice quite a few titles. And so, using the CREW method, I know that I can use the worst, WORST, looking for worn out, out of date, rarely used, supplied elsewhere, and trivial or faddish to help me weed books. So, of the CREW method, I looked at this the most. And so, as I was choosing to weed through, what I chose to look at, um, this Young profiles, I feel like definitely fit the faddish. I'm sure that these books were really popular at one time, but as you can see, a lot of the dates are 99, 98, 2000. And so I would choose to read these books. This book here about Prince William, I realize he's still a public figure. However, this book was published in 1999, and so it's possible that the information is out of date or definitely not up to date. So I would read that one as well. I noticed a lot of these picture book of. I've seen these books in person in our library. A lot of them are quite old. They're not in great shape. They're worn out. And so, even though they're on really popular figures, if there were multiple biographies about these people, I would choose to read these first. So, like I said, when I was looking, I noticed a lot of copies of books about specific people. So, for example, George Washington, when I was looking at books on him, specifically in the K through 2 interest level, and I filtered all of my books for this interest level because I was specifically looking at books for younger students. Um, so there were a lot of books about George Washington and also George Washington Carver. So what I would choose to read is the Young George Washington and the picture book of George Washington. I just feel like these are out of date. They're worn out. They're pictures versus photographs, obviously, for a reason, but they're not very popular in our library. I also noticed a lot of books about Rosa Parks. Um, there were 10 books about Rosa Parks in my library, and when I filtered it to K through 2, there were 5. I would choose to read this picture book of Rosa Parks for the same reason. It doesn't have photographs, and it's out of date. It's from 1993. There were quite a few titles about Anne Frank, 17 in my library, and when I um, filtered it down to K through 2, there were 5 books about Anne Frank. So I would definitely choose to read this picture book of Anne Frank again for the illustrations versus photographs. Um, let's see. There were quite a few books about Martin Luther King. We had 15 books in our library about Martin Luther King, 5 when I filtered down to K through 2. I would definitely remove this picture book of Martin Luther King and the Young Martin Luther King series, like I did for other um, significant people. I had noticed a lot of books about Abraham Lincoln. There were 6 in my library. When I filtered it down to K through 2, there were only 3. And so I don't think I would choose to read any of these, just because I think he's a popular um, public figure that students are going to be doing research on, looking for biographies. And I think it's important to keep the interest level. So I chose not to weed any of these. Going back to the picture book series, I could choose to look up each person listed in this series, like Benjamin Franklin and Robert E. Lee, and see if there are other biographies on these people. I think they're people of significance and books and biographies that people or students will be looking for. But if I had other titles on these public figures, I would choose to weed this entire series. I don't think that the biography section of my library has been weeded effectively. I know that there's an older librarian retiring from this past year, and she had already told me that a lot of weeding needed to be done in the nonfiction section, that she had really focused on fiction. Um, and so I know that a lot of that needs to be done. Um, Another thing in my older library that I really need to be looking for is worn out books, like the ugly books and the musty. Um, but obviously, that's not something that I can be on the lookout for when just using the online catalog. So I chose to really look for things that were out of date, rarely used, or trivial or faddish when weeding today. Thank you.